We're only 2 months into the year and gamers are feasting already. Between dreams fulfilled, stellar remakes, and impressive adaptations, we discuss it all and more on episode 279 of the It's Obvious podcast. My name's Garrett Drake, and I'm joined online by Jacob Alka. Jacob, how are you, my friend?
Garrett, good morning. Hello. I'm stuffy, and I'm sleepy, but I'm here because I want to talk to you, and I miss doing the podcast, and I miss you. So how you doing?
Man, I miss you too, Jacob. I know we discussed prior to recording this episode the potential of maybe going to brunch or lunch after this. You still interested?
I don't know. I have to think about it. I really have to think about it, Garrett, because
think long and hard about it.
I do miss you, but I also need to work out today.
Well, yeah, so do I, but you can always get a little, pre-workout brunch in there or lunch.
See, that's just going to leave me stuffed. That's the problem. And then I'm not going to want to go to the gym for like 2 or 3 hours after that. And then by that point, it's going to be dinner time.
See, I've already made my decision. I'm working out late afternoon because then I got to go all the way to Dahlonega to my parents' place tonight. So that's my game.
How are you going to play Harry Potter?
I'm going to do that late at night. So I played also late at night Harry Potter. I've been addicted to that game, which we'll get to. But yeah, it's good to be back on episode 279. Still love doing this when we can. It's miraculous when we can. We kind of intentionally waited this time because there was obviously a lot happening between The Last of Us, Dead Space came out. A bunch of other games have dropped. Surprise drops, actually, and including Hogwarts. We wanted a good meaty episode to bring to the world. So I'm stoked, Jacob. Glad to be back, as I said, and I'd love for you to bring me up to speed on your last couple of weeks, and we can, of course, get into what we've been playing, but how's life in general? And you said you're a little stuffy, a little sleepy this morning. Aside from that, how are you generally feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. Been doing pretty well. Just been busy at work. Been spending my free time, watching One Piece, playing Harry Potter as of late. Joined a new guild in WoW with some friends, so just playing with some new people that are more on like our skill tier, I guess you could say, and that's been kind of refreshing too. So,
did you upset more of your old friends? Were they pissed that you left the other guild?
Not. I mean, I upset people that I wasn't friends with, I guess you could say. So everyone that I liked playing with and that I like personally, we all transferred servers. So we
kind of speak like voice chat with these people?
Oh yeah.
Man, have you been playing with anyone for like over a decade that you've never met in person?
So not really, but I've known people in the game for over a decade. Like one of my friends, he's actually in our Discord now. He kind of looks at our Discord sometimes. I met him back in, God, I want to say like maybe 8th grade or something. Like whenever the Wrath of the Lich King expansion came out. And I just met this guy randomly, and we were running dungeons, and turns out like I've been talking to him for probably like 15 years now. It's insane, but I still keep up with him. He's a Canadian, believe it or not. And I wonder if he'll ever listen to this and realize that I'm talking about him. But yeah, I used to like just stay in touch, or I still do on occasion. Stay in touch, talk about each other's lives, But I don't play with it much anymore because he's more of a PvPer and I do more of like PvE content, like raids and dungeons and stuff. So, but like people that I currently play with right now, I probably played with them for maybe 2 years, 2 or 3 years. So, yeah,
that's impressive. Even that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's been fun, man. Besides that, have you ever been to Ginny's at the Krog Street?
Ginny's ice cream?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have.
Went there last night. Got some brambleberry. That stuff is so good, man.
That is an iconic flavor.
Oh my God.
Arguably their best. I mean, they have many good ones, but brambleberry's up there for me.
Yeah. So it was like 70 a couple days ago here in the city, and last night it got down to like 30 here in the city.
Yeah.
Which is like freezing for us. And we
classic
decided that
bipolar Georgia weather.
Yeah. We decided that was a perfect time to go get some frozen ice cream and then walk around.
I'd eat ice cream in like negative degree weather. I love it so much.
It was certainly worth it. It was so good.
It's my weakness for sure.
But yeah, that's about all that's exciting about me before we get into games.
Nice. Yeah, not much to report on my end. Just working as usual, playing games on the side, and happy to be doing so.
I'm happy that you're
Jacob,
happy.
Yeah, thank you. On that note, what have you been playing?
So I mentioned WoW a little bit, and that's kind of what I've been doing there. And one more note to add to that is that since we've joined this new guild, we started like progressing into the highest difficulty of raiding, which is called Mythic raiding, and we've downed 3 bosses so far out of 8, and it's been quite the challenge. So the first 2 were kind of easy, and the third one kind of took us about a week of progressing to sort of down him. And we only raided once last week, so this week will be like a normal week. We only raid 2 nights, but we're hoping to get a 4th one down this week. Just slowly chip them away, because once you get to like probably 7 or 8, it gets really tough. So we're kind of just seeing how far we can get as a guild. We're not trying to be super hardcore about it, but we're also at a point where we're like starting to cut people if they don't have enough gear or they're not doing enough damage. So it's just kind of cool being in an environment like that, I guess, and being able to perform. So with your friends too. So that's
on that note. I like exactly what you're describing, where you find a group of people that are pretty hardcore about the gameplay side and like want to do well and aren't willing to like hurt people's feelings. There are a couple of guys that I play hardcore Halo 3 with recently, and like as hardcore as it gets, like BRs only, like that's it, like BRs Team Slayer, and awesome dudes. But they're the kind of guys that have been playing for so long that they're totally fine with just like criticizing each other when the match is over. Like if we lose, like we'll just call each other out on like who did something wrong, and not to the point where they're like kicking people out of the party or anything, but they're like very serious about performing well, and like their call outs feel like an MLG team. And I'm kind of just along for the ride. I'm pretty much like I'm kind of a silent player. I speak up sometimes, but I hold my own with them, which is awesome. We win fairly often. Awesome. But it's just funny, after all these years since 2007, here I am playing hardcore Halo 3 at least once every couple of weeks with these guys. But like you said with the WoW guys, like I like when you find guys that take it seriously, like in a fun way. Like you just want to do really well, and like if someone's not holding their own, they got to go.
Yeah.
So
it's nothing personal. It's just, you got to do what you got to do, or we're not going to clear the content. So besides that, I've been playing not loads of Hogwarts Legacy, but I want to say like 15, 16 hours. So I'm quite a bit of ways back from you, because you had access to the game 5 days before me, or 4 days, something like that. So, but I've just been kind of chipping away at it, kind of like every day, but not every day, honestly. I don't even know where to start with that. Maybe want to like have a whole segment about Harry Potter.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, okay. Anything else you've been playing before Hogwarts? That'll be our big chunk this episode.
No, that's it for me.
Okay. So aside from Hogwarts, I have almost finished the Dead Space remake. I got to the very, very end and Hogwarts dropped. I was like, well, I can't deal with this right now. So my intention is, after I've completely exhausted Hogwarts, potentially after I've platinumed Hogwarts, I will go back to Dead Space, finish it. My intent is this depends on if I get back to it before Resident Evil drops, but I want to go back to Dead Space and get the platinum for that, just out of pure respect and adoration, because the remake is phenomenal. And after that, I think in between Resident Evil, I'm going to play Metroid Prime finally, because I'd started that on GameCube back in the day. And my hang up with it was I only played like the first 5 or 6 hours. And my hang up was I just wanted it to be Halo, because when that game came out on GameCube, I wasn't allowed to play Halo yet. And I just wanted it to be Halo, so I pretended like it was Halo. And it's just like this weird mental block I had, so I never finished it. But as you've probably seen, a lot of people have said the remake is outstanding, so I intend to go back and play that. And I do want to try Hi-Fi Rush at some point as well, because I think it looks sick. So that's on my docket, with everything else coming out this year, including Star Wars later in, I think, March now is when it's coming out. Or April. Yeah, it's April. Dead Space, I won't spend too much time on, but the gameplay loop was relatively fresh in my mind, because I just played 2 and 3. Didn't finish 3, but really loved 2. And I hadn't played the original since like the month it came out, but I remember loving it back in the day. And So the remake has been outstanding. It feels very much how the original felt, but it is improved in every single way, as people describe. Of course, graphically, it's very obvious. And it was a little hung up. There's like some sort of visual glitch on the first couple of days on PS5, but they quickly patched that. And running in performance mode, and especially if you turn off, I usually am like a fan of film grain personally in games, but for some reason in Dead Space, I didn't feel like it looked as well. It wasn't implemented as well. So if you turn off film grain entirely, running in performance mode, it looks just so beautiful. And the lighting is absolutely stunning. The new gore effects with all the enemies is incredible. Love the sound design, all the new side objectives, all the new secret areas and backtracking they've added in. Isn't entirely substantial, but it adds just enough to make it feel entirely fresh again. It does very much feel like a modern survival horror game. And Dead Space has always been called survival horror, and I feel like on the hardest difficulty it is, like on Impossible especially, but even on hard, it still very much just feels like an action horror game to me. And there's maybe only been a couple of moments where I've truly been spooked. I guess I like back in the day when I first played it, I was much more susceptible to scary stuff like that. But I guess I've played so many horror games since, and I've played the majority of the Dead Space games that going back to the original, there weren't too many spooky moments, but definitely a couple of jump scares that got me that were very effective. But I've loved it, dude. I think I was a little hesitant about the idea of Isaac, the main character, having a voice in the first game, because what I liked about the first game when I first played it was he was a silent protagonist, so you really did feel like you were the guy in the suit, and it was your reactions as the character, and he never really responded to dialogue or conversation. Yeah. So it also felt more lonesome in that way. So all you really ever heard was like his grunts or his screams or his heavy breathing. So I was worried about that, but I think they actually implemented it wonderfully, because he's an awesome character in Dead Space 2 and 3. He has a great personality. Really interesting how the first game affected him going into the following games. So to have his voice seamlessly put into the first game was incredibly impressive. And I thought it was even cooler that they actually scanned the actor into the game. So it's actually his face as the character now. So great job with that. I'm trying to think of anything else like really pertinent to talk about in Dead Space other than just I'm really impressed by it. I love the DualSense features. The new sections they kind of remixed to make more modern. There's an infamous turret sequence from the first game that a lot of people hated. I didn't have many memories from it, but seeing the comparisons between what they do in the remake versus the original was a very smart choice to make it more modern and more bearable. So I think the best part about the remake in its entirety is that you can tell like a lot of heart and soul went into it, which is always a great thing to see. But it also shows what Motive's actually capable of. So if they're still working on the Iron Man game, great. Like I actually think they can do a lot now, because before that, obviously they did the Rogue Squadron Star Wars game. I think that's what it was called. And they did the story mode for Battlefront 2, which both were kind of whatever. Not really bad, just not mind-blowing. So the Dead Space remake, although like the structure was there and they built upon it, it's not like they built it from scratch, but even what they did, which is very smart choices they made to bring it to the modern era. So that was impressive. So I have high hopes for Iron Man now. And apparently I haven't seen the new secret ending they added after you beat it on New Game Plus, but supposedly it sets up a new sequel. There's a rumor that it'll be like the true Dead Space 3, and they'll like say the original Dead Space 3 is like fan fiction, or like kind of like what they did with Dragon Ball GT, where it exists, but it's no longer part of like canon. I don't know if that's what they're going to do, but I think it'd be cool if they had the opportunity to make their own original Dead Space game after this. I think they definitely deserve it.
Be interesting. A little bit of retcon.
So, yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I'm someone who doesn't hate Dead Space 3. I've played almost all of it, and I think for what it is, it's a fine game. It just isn't nearly as interesting as the first two. But anyway, Dead Space, really solid if you were considering play it, especially if you haven't played the original. I think this is the optimal way to experience it, and is 100% worth playing.
How long is it?
I think you can, if you just mainline it and don't do any of the side stuff, you can probably do it in like 11, 12 hours. Okay. I'm pushing to like almost 14 though, because I've been really taking my time doing all the side stuff that you can do. Because I'm trying to get as many trophies as I can in the first playthrough, and then clean up the rest with the New Game Plus.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, just great game all around. Highly recommend it. And apart from that, continue to play Warzone on the side with Zach and Andy. And we were stoked to see the changes they brought to the mode, which I won't go into. I don't want to bore people with the details, but they've made some good changes that are kind of funny because everything they changed about Warzone 2 initially on paper sounded like a great idea, but in reality turned out to be not so good. Really? So it's pretty much reverted back to how Warzone 1 was in almost every way,
Really?
With the exception that you do still have a backpack. So you can still sort of customize your loadout more so than you could in Warzone 1. But they've removed like the upgrades to backpacks, whereas in original Warzone 2.0 you could have a medium or large backpacks. You can store even more crap to your heart's content, but they've really limited what you can carry at this point. So they're working out the kinks. It isn't a perfect revision they've made, but they're on the right track with the gulag and looting and stuff like that. But they added Resurgence back to the game. And if you're not familiar with Resurgence, it's the type of Warzone where if you get killed, there's like a timer. It says like if your teammate remains alive for the next 10 to 15 seconds, you can drop back in free of charge. You don't go to the gulag in this mode. So we've always kind of preferred that. Yeah, it is completely wild. It's on a smaller map too, a brand new map that's solid. It's called Ashika Island. We've liked it so far. We haven't won yet because it's only quads, and we've not yet had a chance to play with a full team of 4. So we always have like the random 4th player that never knows what they're doing and like runs off like a rogue soldier on their own and gets killed and just like causes us problems. So we've had a couple close calls. We haven't won yet on Ashika Island, but we're digging it. So been doing that on the side.
That's cool.
But that's it for me, Jacob, apart from the big one, which is Hogwarts Legacy. So if you're ready to talk about that, I got to lead us in with a couple of questions.
Yeah, lead us in, man.
All right, first one's from Georgie. Straight into the point. It says, how are y'all finding Hogwarts Legacy? Miss ya, bye. And then Final Fantasy XIV Addict follows it up and says, sup nerds. 4 things for you about warthogs. How you liking it? We'll go through these one at a time. I don't want to go on a huge tangent just yet. So if you read through this with me, Jacob, I want to hit all of his points before we go on a deep dive. So how you liking it? What house? Evil or good? Favorite spells? Let's go from there. So after you, how you liking it? Just general broad thoughts before we get into the nitty gritty.
Overall, I like it a lot. I think it has some problems. I think it has some issues, and despite that, I still think it's probably the best example we have of bringing Hogwarts to life. Like even better than the movies. Like it takes a lot of stuff from the movies and it takes a lot of stuff from the books, and I think it does a good job of like blending the two. And the castle is amazing. Like I almost have no complaints about the castle at all. In fact, I can't even think of one. The game has just been such a treat to play so far, and I feel like I barely even scratched the surface too. Like I feel like I have so much more to explore, to learn in class, and like through new spells. I feel like I haven't even met nearly half the cast yet. Like I just feel like I have so much to look forward to still. What about you?
I love the game. It definitely has. I have some minor gripes, but overall, I've been completely captivated by it. I am 42 hours deep. I think 43 actually, and I've been playing it almost nonstop when I have free time. And what's fascinated me about it is that even 42 hours in, I'm still unlocking new abilities, new mechanics, new areas, finding secret areas, meeting new characters, new types of quests, new types of puzzles. And this is 42 hours deep. Granted, it depends on how quickly you mainline the story, but I've been pouring every ounce of my extra time into obviously doing the side quests that are scripted, but even just the ways in which you can interact with not only Hogwarts itself, but the world surrounding Hogwarts, which is surprisingly gigantic. Mm-hmm. And so I've just been completely addicted to it in every way. And I think, generally speaking, of course, we'll get into all these other things individually, but I think one thing that I really like about it has a lot of Fable energy. Like the whimsical nature of it feels very Fable-like, which is also very nostalgic for me. But I'll say this just at the top. I think after waiting all this time for a game like this, I think this is almost. It's super close to being everything I ever imagined it could be, and in some ways even more than what I imagined it could be, which is unbelievable, considering what little history Avalanche has as a studio prior to this. And I did not expect them to go as hard as they did, which is amazing. So generally liking it a lot. What house did you go with?
I am in Slytherin. What about you?
Nice. So I want to ask you before I talk about mine, did the hat suggest that house to you, or did you manually pick it?
No, it suggested my Pottermore house.
Oh, you imported that?
Yeah.
Nice. Did you import your wand as well?
I believe it did, but I also customized a new wand.
Nice. What was your Pottermore house?
What do you think it is?
Ravenclaw.
No.
Are you Gryffindor?
No.
You're Hufflepuff?
Yeah.
Weird, dude.
I know.
Interesting. I was Gryffindor in Pottermore.
Interesting.
And I was actually surprised because I'd long thought that, because I'd taken the Pottermore test a couple of times, got Gryffindor both times. But I was convinced that I was a Slytherin at heart, because there was a couple of like dark decisions I feel like I would make in certain scenarios. And that's what's interesting about my character in game. I went with Gryffindor just because ever since I read the first book as a kid, it was always my fantasy to be a Gryffindor student. So first playthrough, first character, I was like, I have to be Gryffindor. What's funny is that the hat suggested I be Hufflepuff based on the decisions I answered. I was like, oh, weird. It's like, well, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, we could have been brothers in arms.
Yeah. I pulled a Harry Potter and suggested Gryffindor. I was like, not Hufflepuff. Better be Gryffindor. Anyway.
It was like, yeah.
I went with Gryffindor. I will say, we'll talk a little more about the intro later, but I appreciate that that's sort of in line with what I always imagined. I always thought those decisions would be a little more ambiguous leading up to the hat, but I like that they kind of put into the game what I had sort of imagined, when there's like a series of decisions you make, and the hat will be like, oh, you should be this, but if you want to, be whatever else you want. So I appreciate that they at least implemented that option.
Yeah, for sure. Otherwise, you would have had to like manipulate your answers to be in a certain
Yeah. Preston told me the hat suggested he be Hufflepuff, and he went with it. He's like, all right, so he's Hufflepuff as well.
He's a brave man.
Yep. So yeah, no hate on Hufflepuff, dude. I just know, like, I've fantasized about this kind of game for a very long time. It's like, I have to be Gryffindor. It's just where my heart's calling me. But
yeah, like my whole thing is. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say that my whole thing with like playing this game is that I wanted to be Slytherin, and I wanted to be a dick, and I want to like learn the dark curses, and I want to just like every opportunity that I get when I have like a choice to answer, and one sounds a little more sarcastic or mean, I usually pick that one. Unless it's like a character move I really like, and I'll like be nice to them.
Nice. See, I guess I like to think I'm making a couple dark decisions along the way, but it just turns out, one, there's not a morality system in the game, and there's no repercussions for using the unforgivable curses. But I do like that at least like good characters will say something when you use the curses. Yeah. And so I just unlocked Crucio in the game.
Oh, really? I'm about to.
Really cool quest to unlock that too. I really dug that. But although there's no morality system, I'm still role playing the absolute heck out of this game. Like, even if there aren't like strict rules to the morality system, or even strict systems to really move you along, I'm very much still treating it like a hardcore RPG, in the sense that depending on where I'm at, depends on that'll determine what I wear. And I even have done the thing where my character had a certain hairstyle at the beginning of the game, and then when fall hit, like autumn, when the second semester rolls around, I grew his hair out a little bit longer. And then when I just got to winter finally, so then I cut it short. So I'm like doing I'm basically simulating what the movies did, where like Harry and Ron's hair gets longer and longer up until Goblet of Fire, and then they cut it all off in Order of the Phoenix. That's basically what I've simulated. And now my character's wearing, like, whenever I'm at Hogwarts, I'm in school gear. I'm in my robe. I'm in like the variety of clothing they give you. Yeah. We're kind of getting the nitty gritty now. I'm going to come back to this question in a sec. But one thing I really like is that through the transmog system, when you find a new outfit or any article of clothing, even if you sell it or destroy it, you always have it in your inventory. So obviously you can wear the best gear, but then transmog it look however you want. So you just have this gigantic catalog of clothing to wear at any time. Yeah. So whenever I'm at school, I'm in some form of my school uniform. But if I'm going out adventuring into the world, I'll wear some cool, like, like just more laid back clothes like boots, and I'll throw on like a long leather coat to like my adventuring gear. And now that I hit winter, I'm finally wearing a scarf and I got gloves on whenever I'm outside. So that's what I mean by like really role playing this. Like I want to feel as immersed as possible. But I'm going to come back to my thoughts on like the immersion side later. But to get back to his question, he says, evil or good? I'm playing good, but I feel like I made a couple of dark decisions and like side quests and stuff. But that's why I always found interesting about Harry Potter as a character is that the hat recognized like you have potential to be an extremely dark wizard, but the good in you is kind of overcoming the darkness that's inherently there. Maybe because Harry's like a Horcrux. Partly a Horcrux is why he kind of has that darkness in him, but that always fascinated me about Harry as a character. It's kind of interesting to be about my own decisions is that I want to be a good guy, but there are scenarios where I feel like making the dark decision makes more sense. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting. But anyway, favorite spells.
My favorite spells?
Yeah.
Probably the main 3, really, maybe 4 that I use are I like Expelliarmus. I like how I have like the thing where it puts a curse on somebody when you use it. So I like using that. I think it's called what's it called? It starts with a D or something.
You think about the fire spell?
No, it's like Depulso. It's like a purple spell.
Oh yeah, where you launch someone back.
People. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool spell.
Like
especially when you're on like a mountain or something.
Yeah.
I also like Descendo, where you slam them into the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
and of course Flipendo. Flipendo is just classic. I'm so glad it's in the game.
I just unlocked, or I like just got the quest to unlock Flipendo, so I need to do that. I like Confrigo. I think you like launch Fireball at someone.
Yeah, that's a sick one.
That's a cool one. I prefer that one.
I'm about to unlock Bombarda, which is apparently the most powerful damage spell.
Oh, really?
It's like explosive. Looks pretty cool.
I unlocked the one that like throws the little wind slashes. Those are kind of cool. Or that one's cool, but I forgot what it's called.
Oh yeah, that is. I'm looking at them right now. Where'd it go?
I am too.
Defendo.
Yeah, Defendo. I also like Incendio, but I don't use it as much.
Are you playing on PC?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just looking at a list of
spells. It's so good on PS5.
Yeah, I love the DualSense features. We can talk about that a little bit later. I like Glacius too. That one's fun.
Mm-hmm. What I love about it is that someone made a comment about this, is that I guess Avalanche and through Portkey is under WB, is that WB games generally have just great combat. And I think someone in Discord actually described it as kind of like ranged Arkham combat, and that's kind of what it feels like. But I would say it's a mix of like ranged Arkham and then also Spider-Man on PS4, PS5, because they give you all these tools and it's up to you to use them creatively. And not to mention everything you have on your L1 button, where you have all these different plants you can grow to use in combat, all these different potions that impact combat, and mixing all those in addition to your combination of spells, for me, so far has made combat just a ton of fun. And I'm not opposed to getting in a fight at any time, because I always will find creative ways to make it interesting. Yeah. And I love too that on top of that, the talent trees give you even further customization to just amp up your character and your abilities. Yeah. This is what I mean by like many aspects where I'm like, they did not have to go this hard on the RPG side, that I'm so appreciative of. Because it's made the game, and I'm just talking about combat right now, aside from all the other great things in the games that made combat just endlessly fun for me. Depending on what environment you're in and the types of enemies you're facing. And I like you're just always having to think on your feet, especially at least on normal, where guys will have different types of shields and how to deal with those guys. And of course you have your ancient magic abilities, which are also cool. But like I said, I just unlocked Crucio, and I only use it if I'm not with my allies. If I'm just flying solo, I'll use it on like bosses and stuff. And I think it's so cool that whenever you cast it, your character says it in like a sinister way. Crucio. Yeah, it's pretty sick. But there is I don't know if you found it yet, in the Forbidden Forest, you can unlock a dark arts arena where you go in and you only have the forgivable curses at your disposal. So you're just slaughtering everything. And it's actually pretty tough by the final wave, but you get like a cool reward for completing it. That's cool. But it's pretty cool. One thing that I like narratively that I didn't expect is that I did this dark arts arena and killed all these people in this arena. And me just thinking like, oh, it's a video game, like no one's going to notice. And I come out like an hour later, I start fighting these guys in a camp out in the wilderness, and they're like, you're the student using the unforgivable curses or something. Like they called me out on using them, which I thought was pretty cool.
Hey, you're bad.
But
you're a bad kid.
yeah, I haven't unlocked like Avada Kedavra or anything yet. I eventually will because I'm on that quest path right now. But I'm only going to use curses on very specific enemies. And I will say narratively too. Again, I don't want to go off too many tangents. There have been some very dark storylines in this that I was very surprised at how hardcore it was.
Yeah.
And mostly side stuff, not so much the main stuff yet, but a couple of side quests have been extremely dark. And one of them actually saddened me how deeply sad it was, but don't want to spoil it. But yeah, surprisingly deep narrative stuff on the side.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Anyway, he says, I've been enjoying the game quite a bit, and I find the combat to be kind of, Final Fantasy XIV Addict said it, kind of like range take on Arkham combat, so I'm really enjoying that part. The world itself is really immersive, as well as all the magic-y goodness. Totally agree.
Yeah, I love how you can spin every globe in every room you walk in.
Yeah.
It really sells it for me.
And sip tea, eat fruit, eat candy.
They eat little nuts on the table.
Yeah. So let's, I kind of broke it down into subjects here so we don't get too off track, but let's talk about the story first. Just give me just your general thoughts without spoilers. I know you're not very far into it. Just so far how you're feeling about the main story.
I think the main story is fine so far. I am intrigued by, without really spoiling anything, I'm intrigued by sort of, so your character in the game has the ability to see special kinds of magic that most people can't see. And I'm sort of intrigued by why that is and why you can see them and what it's going to lead to. So I'm kind of intrigued by that, and I want to see where it goes. Sort of like the characters that are tied to that quest, I guess, or overall arc are intriguing, and I'm curious to see where the story leads there. Other than that, like the story in the school with I feel like there's quite a few main quests about just like getting to know characters so far, and I've enjoyed each one of those a lot. I really like Sebastian a lot. He's in Slytherin, and I like Natty from Gryffindor. She's cool. Then I think there's a Hufflepuff girl that I enjoyed her quest. I think I went and saved her grandfather or her dad or something, or her uncle from a goblin encampment. And then I had a conversation with her after, and she thanked me, and that was really cool. But yeah, just anytime I'm in class and you have an interaction, or you have to do some tasks to go so you do some tasks, then you can have the option to learn a new spell. That's always cool. And just the castle itself has its own story. I feel like anytime you go to a new area, or anytime you can unlock a new door with what's the spell called?
Alohomora.
Yeah, Alohomora, thank you. There's just always cool stuff in any room that you can access. But I guess I can't really speak too much on the main story because I haven't seen enough. But I guess there are moments where I'm just kind of I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It's. I feel like the story is more in the castle itself, not the overall narrative of Ranrock and whoever the human guy is that's helping him. Whenever we get into that stuff, I'm more of just this is kind of lame in some ways, but in other ways, I'm just more excited to get back to the castle and interact with the students. How do you feel about it?
So I always had the thought, leading up to this game, that they could have given me just a simulator with no story. And I create the story myself. I would have been just happy with that. So the fact that there is a main narrative of any kind is just kind of the cherry on top to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have been anything. I could have been whatever about it, because all I've ever really wanted to do is just exist in this world. So I think the best part about the story for me so far is that I think it was very smart how they framed it in the beginning and how it plays out in the beginning. Because remember, years leading up to this podcast, I always imagine, like you'll get your letter and you'll go to Diagon Alley and make all these decisions and get your school supplies, ride the Hogwarts Express, get to the castle. I would have loved all that. But I think the way they did it was very smart, not only just to make it engaging and immediately fun, but introducing you to mechanics at the beginning, I think works very well. And also the narrative, the fact that you're a fifth year works for a variety of reasons. One, it's just kind of interesting. They're like, oh, you're a random new fifth year student. That alone just on paper sounds cool. But also, if you're not at least a third year, you can't go to Hogsmeade or anything, so it opens the door to that. And if also you're not at least a fifth year, you're still pretty young, so it'd be kind of weird if you're just like kicking ass as like a third or second year or something.
It would really limit the combat.
Yeah, so I like the intrigue of the beginning, which I don't want to spoil for everyone. The way it opens, I thought was pretty cool and kind of sets the stage for what's going on. And I like everything that leads up to you first arriving at Hogwarts. I thought was just beautiful. And the way you get sorted into your house, I thought worked very well narratively. And you also still kind of get the Diagon Alley experience, because at the beginning, like, you need to go to Diagon Alley and get the rest of your school supplies. So you kind of still get that flavor and even get the Ollivanders experience. And I didn't at all expect that they would let you craft your own wand, which I thought was so cool. So I spent like 20 minutes just like agonizing over what I wanted it to be. But love that they give you that option. One side thought I've had is that I think it's odd that you have this big experience with Ollivanders crafting your first wand, and then anytime you go back there, he doesn't even acknowledge your presence. You just walk in, he's like writing on his notepad and just doesn't even say hello or anything. There's nothing to interact with in his store. It's just, you're done.
Interesting.
It's like, all right. So I expected at least go in there and be able to like talk to him and about more, because a lot of the professors you can just approach and like talk to them about their history and stuff. But Ollivander is like, here's your wand, like don't come back here, basically. But I dig that. But I think the way the game introduces the mechanics initially is really impressive. And I also think the pacing, depending on how you choose to play the game, the rate at which you unlock new spells, introduction to new types of puzzles and secret areas, and especially the room requirement stuff, which we'll get to, has been paced very well. And I just hit winter finally in the main story path. And I've enjoyed it. The main story hasn't necessarily like blown me away or anything, but I haven't been bored by it. I've enjoyed it for what it is, and I love that it takes place in the 1800s. I think that alone is very interesting, and I also like the idea of, like, of course, you being the main character in the sense that you're one of these rare wizards or witches that has this ancient ability that not many have, and it's up to you to harness it for good or evil.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. So. Hasn't blown my mind narratively, but I've enjoyed it for what it is. And like I said, it's just the cherry on top of exploring this world generally. So
yeah,
it's working for me so far is what I'll say.
100%. Yeah.
So how do you feel about quests between side quests and main quest? How have you enjoyed the questing experience in the game?
A lot of the main quests are interesting, and they're usually in tandem with interesting people, or you're going to do interesting things. Some of the side quests are kind of just like typical RPG, go here, kill something or retrieve something and come back to me and I'll give you a reward. But also a lot of the side quests are like, hey, go do these 2 tasks and then come back and you learn a new spell. Like, that's kind of cool. I think it has a nice mix of, just good quests and then kind of like, for lack of a better phrase, like a busy quest, like just an RPG quest. I think there's plenty there to keep anyone busy that wants to partake in side quests, and I just like that you can go to random places and pick up side quests if you want to. Like, you don't have to pick them up; they're just there if you want the content. And a lot of them are actually pretty entertaining. So, I've enjoyed quite a few of them. I think I just started the Crucio quest with Sebastian and the other kid that's in Slytherin. I forgot his name. What else? Yeah, that's about it. How do you feel about quests?
I dig them. I haven't played a single boring quest. Some of the side quests are much lengthier and more intense than I imagined. I think consistently that's been the case. So it's cool that there hasn't really been a single quest where I've been bored or disappointed. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'll always grab the side quest. My favorite is just stumbling upon like a random side quest out in the wilderness or like in the castle or something. Even if it's something silly, like find all my gobstones. They're up in high places, like that girl. Like, that was fun.
Yeah, I did that one quick.
Yeah, but the questing is structured well. The stories are usually pretty intriguing, and haven't been bored at all. So I think it's solid. Another thing I like, or I'll just jump to the puzzle side. I think just the environmental puzzles within Hogwarts and outside of Hogwarts, and just the variety of them has been a lot of fun. Like the Merlin trials alone, there's
I like the Merlin trials.
a dozen different types of Merlin trials, and I like that. I really like the physics-based ones where you have to like move objects around and stuff. Like any kind of puzzle that requires you to use Wingardium Leviosa or anything, or AskIOG is just a lot of fun to like move objects around. There's some parkour ones. There's some ones that are just pure destruction. So just a variety of those has been a lot of fun, and I like that everything you're doing in the world, and everything you interact with is rewarding you in some way, or you're working towards something. It's never just like just for fun. Like that alone, like back in the day, 30 years ago, would have been like, oh, it's just for fun. Like it's just a fun puzzle. Yeah. But you're getting rewarded for everything you do, which is nice. And usually it's cosmetic rewards, which is fine. But I've reached a point, I will say, is that I'm still, even 40 hours in, still unlocking clothing items that I hadn't seen yet, which is cool. But I have reached a point where I'll enter some caves in the wilderness and I'll like find a piece of clothing I found like 3 times already. So, which is never a huge deal because most of the caves are pretty short. It's not like you're going through a huge dungeon and find like nothing inside. Yeah. But I'm still, for the most part, finding new items out in the world. But that's what's amazing, though. Even within Hogwarts 40 hours in, I'm still finding new areas and secrets and puzzles 40 hours in, which is cool. And the outside world, as we had mentioned, is just gigantic. Not to mention all the towns that you can explore. But the countless caves and broom challenges, the Merlin trials. There's astronomy stuff you unlock later that you can do. I know I'm forgetting some. The landing platforms. There's just so much to play with and interact with in the outside world. I found myself getting lost in the wilderness for like hours at a time, just doing stuff out there. So I didn't expect that at all. Like back in the day, I always just imagined like you're just in Hogwarts the whole time. Of course, you can fly around Hogwarts, but that's all I ever imagined it would be. But the fact that this huge world surrounds it is awesome. And Hogsmeade's a lot of fun too. A lot of cool stuff to discover there. I like that you can go in. Even the shops you can't really buy anything in. I like they allow you to just go in them and explore. Yeah, I agree. One thing I wanted to say about Hogwarts itself, I like that there are familiar aspects that were brought to life in the films, but I really appreciate that the majority of it is their own take on Hogwarts, which is what I'd always hoped, because I always imagined it one way in the book, and then you get it a different way in the films, and I like that in the game it's their own version for the most part. But I do appreciate the little bits and pieces that are callbacks to the movies is cool. Yeah, I think one of my favorite things I've discovered so far is that I found the dock that the Hogwarts Express at Hogsmeade Station leads down this pathway to the dock where the first years get on those boats and row across the river or the lake to the castle. I found that dock, and then if you go across that lake, you can find the entrance where the boats park, and there's an elevator that takes the first year. It even, like, one of the field guide pages explains all this you can collect in there, is where the first years park and then take the elevator up to the main courtyard and go into the Great Hall. That's like the exact path they take, and I love that I discovered that. So that's pretty cool to see. There's a lot of cool Easter eggy type stuff in the game like that. That is a huge fan throughout the years. It's been cool to see.
Going back to puzzles, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I couldn't figure out one specific kind of like interaction. Like, and it was after I unlocked Wingardium Leviosa. So like with that spell, you can like make things, you can drag things around and make things float. So like, I thought that was the only spell like that, but apparently, like, you can move an object and then you can make it levitate with Levioso. So it took me a while to even figure that out. So I was like trying to get up on these ledges and I couldn't because my box was too low on the ground and I couldn't figure out what to do. So I'm like kind of embarrassed to admit that anything that involved that, it took me like a few hours to figure out like, oh, I can make that levitate, then I can jump on it. So that kind of like bricked me in some areas. I'm embarrassed to say.
Yeah, the only puzzles I've been hung up on there are secret Depulso rooms in Hogwarts. I don't know if you've done any of those yet. But you blast open these doors. There are secret areas where you solve puzzles only using AskIOG and Depulso. And there are these big cubes that you shift around these rooms to move to different parts of the room. No, and the first several rooms of puzzles are pretty simple, but then you get to like the other rooms in the castle that just get harder and harder. There was one dude that I spent an hour on. I just could not figure out how to solve it. So I looked it up on YouTube, and it was even more complicated than I was already making it, which is hilarious. I was like, man, this is so complicated. It's like my brain just doesn't understand this. And even when the guy explained it, it was still laughably complicated. I was like, who in their right mind could possibly figure that out on their own? It was ridiculous.
Is there anything tell you how to do that? Like, how will I find that?
You will eventually meet a student that mentions it. She's like, hey, if you didn't know there's these secret rooms, if you use the pulso on it, it'll open. You could probably find it on your own if you look around. Like, obviously there's like a ton of secrets in Hogwarts, but you may see like a button on a wall, and if you just practice spells on it and figure out what works with it, that's what'll open secrets and stuff.
Okay, I'll keep my eye out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other Easter eggs at the top of my head that have been cool. I like that I found the second floor girls' bathroom, and there's a field guide page that says this is before the Chamber of Secrets is opened. So you read this field guide page and it says, yeah, this is a bathroom that for whatever reason this one sink has snakes etched into it. No one knows why. I'm like, that's sick. So that's cool. It's funny to walk around and see students getting yelled at by howlers. I'm still 40 hours in. I'm still seeing funny things students are either talking about or doing in the castle and stuff is fun.
Mm-hmm. I have a question about this, how the story progresses. Like, is it kind of like the Harry Potter story where like if you spend more time with a couple students, do they like sort of become like your Hermione and Ron? Is it like that at all? Or is it
not really? That's one gripe I have with the game is that it doesn't. The only part that doesn't feel very immersive to me is that you can't really interact with you can interact with the world in many ways. It's awesome, but you can't really interact with the characters very much. Yeah. For example, like you'll do a quest with Sebastian or what's the Gryffindor girl's name? Nadia?
I know her nickname's Natty.
Natty, that's right. Really interesting too that her mom's one of the professors, and if you go to her mom's office, you can read like letters and stuff that kind of their backstory is cool. Yeah. But yeah, also she's cool. But you see, when you're doing quests with him, you feel like you're pals with them. But as soon as the quest is over, you can't really interact with him. You can't just like walk up to them randomly and be like, "Hey, what's up?" and just like talk about stuff. Yeah. That's one thing I wish more RPGs would adopt from Red Dead Redemption 2, is that you could just walk up and greet or antagonize people at will. And I thought that just made it feel much more immersive and real, that you could just interact with people whenever you want. So that's the one part that's like I said, you can walk into Ollivander's store and he just doesn't even acknowledge you're standing there, which is odd. Because most of the game feels very immersive to me. And I've taken steps on my own to make it feel more immersive. Like I said, like changing my character's hair and his outfits and stuff. But the people, you can go up to the professors and talk to them willingly and like get to know their backstory and stuff. But everything else, you can't really speak to many characters randomly, which is unfortunate. But it's still cool to see people standing around and talking to each other. It doesn't feel like it's void of life. I wish I could just speak to anyone anytime, even if it's just something random like saying hello or like throwing an insult at them like in Red Dead would be nice. But yeah, that's a minor gripe for me. It does not ruin the game. It doesn't take away from the fun. That's just something I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of.
I agree.
So we briefly talked about combat. Let's kind of go into the DualSense features to comment on the other side of combat. A lot of them feel exactly as I had hoped they would. Mm-hmm. Notably, I think this is the main one I was hoping for, is that when you cast Lumos, your wand vibrates in your hands very subtly for like 10 seconds. Yeah. I wish it would do it the whole time you have that cast. I get that they can, because you could theoretically keep that cast for like 3 hours and it wouldn't make sense if it vibrated the whole time. But I like that it feels like it's a page taken right out of the Demon Souls remake, where you ignite your sword on fire and it's crackling in your hand. Yeah. Love that that's in the game. I love that when Guardian Leviosa feels floaty when you're moving stuff around. That's cool. And of course, all the damage spells feel really intense, like shotgun blast when you're firing them off. Yeah.
I more so like the sounds of the spells in the speaker of the controller. I think that's even better than just the rumble itself for me.
Yeah, I never noticed speaker effects because I always have headphones on.
That's understandable.
But phenomenal sound design overall in the game. Oh, yeah. And also the music, dude, is so beautiful. It feels very familiar to the movies, but it's also a lot of original stuff as well. And I think some of the most beautiful moving music I've heard is in. Have you unlocked the vivarium yet, where you can capture beasts and stuff? Yeah, the music in those areas is awesome, but the depth of the room of requirement, which I guess we can jump to, is fascinating to me. That's another because games like Fallout 4 and trying to think of another example. Any game that allows you to build things and make it your own and like create your own space, I've always been a huge fan of. That's why I went crazy with the building in Fallout 4.
I'm completely the opposite. I don't give a crap about it.
Oh, dude, I love it so much. I think it was so smart that they included that. It'd been one thing just to include the rumor requirement at all, just even as like a story beat, but the fact that they let you create your own space is awesome. And I've taken full advantage of that. I have this whole gardening area where I'm growing all my most important plants to brew all the best potions. So I have an endless supply of the potions I want, the plants I want. I have these hopping pots that will randomly brew random potions every 10 minutes, so I can grab those. I have the moonstone producer, so I have a constant supply of moonstone to keep crafting my room. I've decorated all my walls, and then the vivarium too is even crazier because you can create like you can shift the land and add trees and grass and castle parts and build all these structures. So I'll eventually go Fallout 4 with that and like create castles and stuff on my vivariums.
Wait, you can customize that area too?
Yeah, it's different from the actual rooms. You can like create nature and stuff in those areas. And those keep expanding, by the way. I don't know if you knew that yet. It was a surprise to me. You continue to get even more rooms in the room requirement that enable you to do other stuff.
Yeah, I unlocked one room down some stairs, but I haven't really done anything with it yet. I didn't even know you could have more than one like potion table.
Oh yeah, dude, you can just craft stuff at will. And there's like all these different levels of potion tables and herbology tables that enable you to do different things. This is why we need to do a Let's Play, so I can fill in the gaps for you in case you're missing.
Like I literally have like my single room right now, and like every corner has like a different thing. that's my whole fucking.
You could create 100 potion tables if you wanted to. You have a budget in each room of like what you can create, but you can create multiple things to like do whatever you want. So I think you'd be impressed with my setup and my room requirements. Very efficient. I would be. But one thing I will say is that I think the gearing system is cool. Like I'm happy that something's there, so it's like whatever you're wearing does matter. Of course, transmog is important. I'm glad that's in there. But the beasts, their main the main reason for their inclusion is that they produce all these materials from their bodies, like feathers and fur and stuff that you can weave into creating stronger like perks for your gear. And I'm not going to use that at all because I'm constantly finding better gear that already have perks in them. And I'm only playing on normal, so I haven't noticed a huge impact on combat, but none of that stuff has really impacted my experience. So I have because I'm constantly changing out my gear anyway, so I have no interest in like farming all these materials from my animals and then weaving it into my clothing only to change it later. I could be misunderstanding how that system works. Maybe you can carry over the perks you've added into your next set of gear. I don't know.
Well, so you can add perks and then you can also just upgrade your gear too. And I've been upgrading pieces of gear, and I mean, it makes them last longer in terms of like replacing them. But
okay, I think that's why it's because like I always find something better anyway, so I don't understand like the purpose of like upgrading it if I'm just. It does feel kind of better.
Weird in that regard because you are finding new pieces of gear that are upgrades pretty frequently.
Yeah. That's why if I wasn't finding stuff as frequently, I probably would take full advantage of that. But I still like that it's in there. I think all the animals are adorable. I have like a feeder for them, and I got a toy box, and they'll actually play with the toys when you bring out the toys.
That's cool. Yeah, I just go in and I brush them all, I feed them, and then I take their feathers.
Yeah, so I like that you can. I'm at the point now where I'm about to learn how to breed them as well. So I guess if someone's really into the hardcore like acquiring materials to like weave into their clothes and breeding all these animals, like they'll have an endless supply. But that's kind of been whatever to me. I just like that it's even in the game at all, that I have like these hippogriffs and nifflers and what are those horses called you can only see after you've seen death?
I don't remember.
I can't remember.
But they are cool. But I like that you like someone. So in the intro, someone dies in front of your eyes, and then the horses appear when you turn around. Yeah,
yeah. That's awesome. I thought that was a cool moment at the beginning. Really hardcore opening too that I was not expecting.
For sure.
But yeah, I like just the fact that you can have animals at all. It's just fun and cool. But yeah, I could talk a lot about room requirement, just the depth that they've added to that and the way that they enable. Because my secondary room, I haven't touched at all. I guess I'll just decorate it to make it look beautiful. Because as far as the practicality of the room, so far I have everything I need. But I just love that, dude. I've always loved that kind of stuff, and that's a great RPG element that really contributes to my enjoyment of the game.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if we've missed anything. I'm trying to think of just generally some of my favorite moments before we move on. One thing I'll do that I try to role play as often as possible is if I have a quest that's not terribly far from Hogwarts or an objective, I will physically walk out of the castle, get onto my broom, and fly toward that objective rather than fast travel. If I'm just trying to do snappy stuff like, oh, I need to buy something for my room requirement, I'll like fast travel and stuff. But I try to fast travel as infrequently as possible because I want it to feel as real as possible. Yeah. Plus, like, you'll never know what you may discover taking a new path through Hogwarts along the way. And a lot of secrets I've discovered is because I chose to walk instead of fast travel.
Yeah.
But I like that they immediately introduce fast travel. They're like, if you don't want to meander around, like, by all means, fast travel, which is very quick, and it loads extremely fast on PS5, which is nice.
Sure.
So a lot of quality of life stuff. I think the UI is not just beautiful, but I think it's very functional as well. I think the UI is excellent. I think the maps are excellent. So I've never gotten lost navigating any of the menus. But
I think some of the fast traveling, like around the castle, is kind of confusing with the map and stuff, but it's not like a big issue once you kind of figure it out.
Yeah, I've gotten used to it because I've done it so much now. But I mean, in the beginning, it was kind of weird, like kind of spinning the castle around and picking one of the flames and then finding
like,
the
where
markers.
exactly am I?
Yeah, but yeah, the more you play, the more Hogwarts becomes familiar to you in terms of navigating the main parts of it. But what's some other things I wish you could do? It's some of the more simulation stuff that's missing for me that I always fantasized about that isn't necessary but would have been nice. Like, it is odd that at night, it's cool that at nighttime if you're wandering around, like, you don't really see many people in the halls. That's realistic. But if you go back to your common room, no one is sleeping in there. It's like, where is everyone?
Yeah,
like,
where's...
I wish they could do
weird.
that. I get why they probably chose to not include that, because you could go in there and just blast people with spells at will and like they wouldn't respond. One thing they could do is just if you pointed your wand at anyone, they could do that classic thing in games. If you're pointing at an ally, you can't actually attack them. Mm-hmm. Like, that could have been a solution. It would have been cool if you could have seen that. I wish that, of course, in the main menu, you have the option to pass time just by waiting. I wish you could also choose, just for fun, to go back to your dorm room and just like choose to sleep in your bed to pass time. Would it be more simulation like? But oh yeah, you also, what's weird to me is that although you can go into the Great Hall and it's cool that based on the seasons the ceiling will change and the decorations will change, but you can't interact with a single thing in there. I mean, there's a couple of like collection pages and there's like a couple like puzzles in there, but you can't. It's funny, out of all the things you can eat in the game, from like stores and like the common room, you can't touch any of the food in the Great Hall, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, how is there not like any story beat moments that take place at that table while you eat?
Oh yeah, no, I was fully expecting, I was always hoping that midday there's like a kid, like for example, I like that there's like arcs to all the side quests, like the dueling club has an arc, like a beginning and end. I think that's cool. Mm-hmm. There's a couple other mini games that have a beginning and end. Like the broom stuff, like the broom challenges, clearly, I haven't finished them yet, but clearly have a beginning and end. So I don't think this would have been fun for hardly anyone, maybe just me, but I always wanted the option to play Wizard's Chess. Can you think about Gwent in The Witcher? I never liked Gwent, but I understood why people liked Gwent. Mm-hmm. A lot of people probably don't want to play chess in a Harry Potter game, but there are a lot of people out there that enjoy digital chess playing online. I think it would have been cool if they had a really immersive, like cinematic looking chessboard that you almost feel like you're on the chessboard when you're playing, and just have like a series of chess. Like there's one kid that has a wizard's chess club in Hogwarts, and maybe you get like a cool wand handle or a room requirement decoration or a cool outfit for winning the chess competition. Yeah. I always imagine it'd be this one kid that just hangs out in the Great Hall with his chessboard and just waiting for someone to come play him, and you play like a series of players and get a cool reward at the end. I would have loved that. I feel like that's something they could easily implement as DLC down the road if they wanted to, but I'm surprised that's not in there. You see Wizards chessboards everywhere, but you can't play, which is kind of a bummer.
It is kind of weird. I mean, they have that one mini game where you like pull the balls towards you on the the board.
And that's fun. See, I think that's genuinely 10 times more fun than any chess game would be. But I still, just as a fan of the series, would have liked to have seen that. And what are you going to say?
I think that's kind of like why they might have done that minigame instead of chess, though, just because from a gameplay standpoint, it might be way more fun and, just a better gameplay experience. But I understand what you're saying. Like, Wizard chess is like a big part of, the books, the movies. We grew up like always being fascinated by, in the first movie, you see them moving these giant statues on a big board. I think we just got kind of wrapped up in the fantasticalness of that. So I definitely get that. It would have been cool to have a little like chess side quest path, but also you got to understand, like, if you don't know how to play chess, like, it's got to be one of the most frustrating things to try to like complete in a game.
But yeah, that's the thing. These, like, again, I totally agree with what you're saying. All the decisions they've made in the game, I think, are very smart. Like, it's never not fun. At least for me, I've never not had fun doing anything I'm doing in the game. Yeah. So very smart decisions they made across the board. I just feel like it would have been a cool opportunity to really make a really unique version of chess in a video game, where I imagine, like, when you move, obviously if you choose to move one of your pieces, it like zooms in on like the piece itself and is almost like you're on the board, almost seeing these pieces attack each other and stuff. They could have made it like really interesting and whimsical and cinematic. Again, not necessary. Just would have been a cool addition.
You never know. Maybe that was something they wanted to do, but they just had to cut it. Maybe. And that's the thing. I think, given the success of this game, I hope that they add a lot of cool stuff to it later on. Notably, I know everyone's talked about this. Everyone's hoping they figure out Quidditch, because I think it's funny about the broom stuff. I've gotten pretty good on a broomstick, and I have mixed thoughts on it, because on one hand, at first I was like, wow, this is like a little more complicated than I think it needs to be. It feels pretty stiff.
But it doesn't feel stiff to me. It's just the way you turn and dip up and down. I didn't expect how it's like dual sticks.
Yeah.
But I kind of appreciate that, because I like to imagine my character had never really been on a broom before. You can have like your broom flying lesson. I like that over time I become a better broom flyer, which feels real to me. Like, I've actually learned to fly well. So they could have made it, I bet they could have made it much more simple, but I like that they made it dual sticks. You almost feel like you're growing and learning as someone who flies on broomsticks, which I really actually appreciate.
I get that.
That being said, I think it's hilarious how many people in notes and environmental things comment on the fact that Quidditch is canceled. And it's like for the stupidest reason. And I think it's obvious that they have to like almost be meta about commenting on that, because I think you think about everything that's in the game is already unbelievable how much is packed into it. Quidditch on top of that it's insane to think they would include basically a sports game into the existing game already. Like, I realize that's asking a lot. And I can't even imagine how difficult it is to make that even make sense. Like, how would you function in all the different positions? Would you only be a seeker? Could you choose to be the other positions?
Yeah.
I can imagine how it could work and how the quest line could play out, but they'd have to design mechanics for each position if you wanted to try each one. I think if they want to go all in on Quidditch, you have to like offer the opportunity to play any position, how to make each position fun, how to make it mechanically make sense. And narratively, it's easy to figure out. It's like you're your house, you play all the teams, and by the end of the season, like, you get cool rewards or something. That's the easy part. Mechanically is the challenge, not to mention how tricky it is already to fly on a broomstick.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like Quidditch would have to feel a little bit different flying to make it work. But I am hoping that in time they somehow figure it out and add it into the game, because that will make it like, it's already like, to me, like the ultimate Hogwarts experience I could ever hope for, but adding Quidditch into the game would just take it to the next level. Mm-hmm. And I think if I were leading that studio, it would be my goal and ambition to like, let's try to figure this out, because like, we've done all this already. Like, that's the ultimate final step, I think, is to figure out Quidditch. But it is funny how many people comment on the fact that Quidditch is canceled in the game.
Yeah. Another thing to think about too is like, if you are going to put that much effort into developing all those systems around Quidditch, like, at that point, do you just want to make it its own separate game, or at the very least, do you want to add an online component so that there's more replayability around it? That's something that I've kind of thought about with Quidditch. Like, would you want to, because it, like you said, it's probably going to be pretty complex to especially if you're, making mechanics and different ways to play around each position in the game. Like, I mean, maybe if they just did like Seeker for an RPG, like you could just do Seeker and you could kind of do the responsibilities of that during a match, that would make more sense. But like, if you want to fully fledge out Quidditch, like that's a lot of work. And like I said, it's kind of like a game in itself.
Totally. That's exactly why it's not the game. And I always realized that was a very high expectation. And come to think of it, what I would do if I were at least pitching it at the studio would be adopt what worked from Quidditch World Cup, the game. That game was not perfect. It had a lot of issues back in the day, but it mostly worked. You got to think of it like FIFA. Like wherever the ball is, that's where you're in control. Like you could basically play as the chasers tossing the quaffle around like you would passing the ball in FIFA. And maybe there's even like quick time events for beaters. Like if what do they call them? Bludgers? Like a bludger's coming toward you. There's like a quick time event to like dodge a bludger. If you get hit, it'll throw you off track. And maybe every time someone shoots, you don't like switch to the perspective of the keeper, but it gives you an option to prompt how you want to block it. Mm-hmm. You could almost do it like single player and make it work where you're almost simultaneously playing all positions. That's how Quidditch World Cup, the game, worked. And then in the final moment when the snitch comes up, it's like a race flying through rings. And think about like the broom challenges in the game. You could implement that into the Seeker part where you and the enemy player are flying through rings and you have those boost balls that make you go even quicker. And if you're a good flyer and stay on track, that's how you get to the snitch. I can see it working. It's just obviously implementing that into the game without bugs and making it work all seamlessly is a lot of work, like you said. Very much would be a game in and of itself. That being said, let's theoretically imagine they nail that. It would be sick to be able to play online at will. And like have like online rankings of like which house is winning the most in Quidditch would be sick.
Yeah.
And someone also made a good point on Twitter, like the combat's so good that you could realistically play against real people in like an online dueling club.
Yeah.
Like it'd be sick, like online leaderboards for all 4 houses is like the Slytherin kids happen to be the best house at dueling club online. Like that'd be so dope if they had that. Cool. And you could just go to the same area where the dueling club happens. Maybe there's like different arenas they could put into the game, but you go on and just, you're in single player world and you go on and you can select like go online and fight like 8 people online in like those areas that are preset in the game. That'd be amazing to me.
Yeah. The only problem about like a ranking with Quidditch though is like it's a team game. So like if you're playing with a bunch of just random people, like it could be a frustrating experience at the same time.
Well, I'm thinking about this though. It's only ever one-on-one. You just happen to control all the positions.
You control I think interesting.
I think that's possible to make it work.
Okay, so kind of like FIFA or something.
Exactly.
Switch to different people.
The chasers are obviously passing the quaffle around. They're the ones shooting, and the beaters would only ever be like random. It'd have to be a little smarter than this, but random quick time events where they like shoot a bludger at you, and you have a split second to dodge it or deflect it somehow. And the keeper's only ever involved when someone actually shoots you. Are instantly put in. And I wouldn't even imagine it changes the camera perspective much. It just zooms in a little bit, and you have the option to try to dodge it. Or to block it or whatever, and then the Seeker would be like the ring thing I mentioned. Yeah. I think it's very possible, and if I were that studio, they've done so much so well already. I would be striving to figure that out, and I think those online ideas for both Quidditch and dueling would be so sick if they added it later on. Yeah. Those are 2 like really big hopes for me long term. In addition to whatever other DLC they have planned.
Oh, I think I saw an article that said they have no plans for any DLC as of right now, but that could change. So. Man, I think it was an IGN article.
That would be so dope if they added that stuff. So dope.
I mean, would you rather them add some DLC now or get a sequel out quicker?
That's the thing, dude. I've thought about the potential for a sequel, and the thing is that they've packed so much into this game. It's like, what could they realistically do that they haven't already done, aside from what we're talking about right now?
I don't know.
Because I've just, like I said, I'm 40 hours in and I'm still doing new things. Still. Which is crazy. So I don't know what more they could do. But obviously, narratively, it could work considering you're a 5th year. They could do year 6 and year 7. Yeah. It's like a trilogy. But Hogwarts is already so fascinating to me. Not only just the beauty and design of it, but the depth of it and all the secrets to unlock. You can't, I mean, it's a magical castle, so you can make the argument of like, well, in year 6, there's all these new secret areas and new puzzles because the castle changes. Like, sure, you could do that, but I I don't know what they could realistically do, but
That's fair.
that's why I'm not a game designer, because those people are much smarter than I am. But I would rather than build on the excellence of what we have already and just build upon it and see how far they can go.
Yeah.
So here's another thing I wanted to ask you. What graphics mode are you playing on?
Performance.
Okay.
I always play performance no matter what.
Yeah, performance is, I also prefer that. What's interesting is that leading up to the game's release, I was like, I'm only playing on PS5 if it has a performance mode. It did. That was a major selling point for me. But another part was I wanted a bigger display to enjoy like the beauty of the game. But I also wanted the DualSense features.
Yeah.
But this is the craziest thing, dude. I have been playing on fidelity ray tracing for almost the whole time.
Wow.
So I started on performance, runs beautifully. But my major gripe with performance was every time you step outside, the resolution and textures dip dramatically. I've always had an eye for frame rate and textures in video games, and it like almost, it doesn't look bad. It was just a significant dip. Whenever you're indoors, looks great in performance mode. As soon as you step out into the open world, it dips dramatically to maintain that frame rate, which is fine. Does not look bad and still runs really, really well, which is most important. But I realized in looking at fidelity ray tracing, it looks so beautiful continuously, whether I was outside or inside, with hardly ever any texture pop-ins. And I was like, this looks too beautiful not to enjoy. So at first, because I played so many performance modes over the last year, almost 2 years, especially on PC, obviously high frame rates, that at first it looked so choppy, I just couldn't stand it. But I finally got back to how it felt to play a 30 FPS game. I think it might be 40 actually, I can't remember. But it's gotten to a point where it looks totally smooth to me and feels smooth. So I have a remarkably smooth experience on a lower frame rate, and it looks just so gorgeous. Especially the textures and lighting are just stunning, what they've achieved. A lot of the animations are solid too. I like when you're in the room of requirement stuff, looking like it's what do they call it? Apparating, like apparating out of thin air. Like all the animations are beautiful. Some of the face stuff and mouth movements aren't totally in sync always, but I'm used to that in most open world RPGs, it not being perfect. But
that's another gripe about this game, is that some of the voice acting and just the character like speaking in their mannerisms is very bad.
you know what's funny is that I almost like how bad some of it is. Like I like how goofy some of the voices are.
Yeah.
Because it adds to like the playful childlike nature to me.
Yeah. Not to mention that the main character sounds like Harry Potter.
He does sound exactly like Harry
that?
Potter. Yeah. Which I'm fine with. My guy doesn't look like Harry Potter, but he does sound like Harry Potter. I will say the only one funny thing is that I'll be in some serious conversation and someone will be like, the worst thing imaginable has happened to them. And it cuts back to my guy. He has this stupid smirk on his face. I'm like, when it matters, like especially in the main story quest, your expressions look correct. But some of the side quests, I'll just have this goofy smile on my face and someone's like, my dad just died. And I'm like smiling about it. So it's funny.
Oh, man.
But yeah, dude, I know I'm definitely forgetting some little things, but overall, I've been totally captivated by it. Even more so than I thought I would be. Because like I said, I barely watched any preview coverage. I didn't watch any trailers. So much of it, some of it may have been like, people may have gone in knowing a lot of this. But for a lot of the gameplay stuff and exploration has been a total surprise to me. It's just been an absolute joy to play. And like I said, it's almost, in some ways, it's everything I hoped it would be. Some ways it's not, and there are aspects of it that are more than I ever thought it could be, which is just wonderful. So very thankful for it. Avalanche killed it, and just have high hopes for whatever they do in the future, whether it's a sequel, but really hoping they just add on to what's already great about this game.
Absolutely. I have so much more to go, and I'm really enjoying it. I just really want to... I really just wish that some of the characters were a little more fleshed out and that you could sort of build stronger bonds with them. That's my biggest gripe, I think.
Yeah. I wish it had a GTA aspect where you could hit up Sebastian and you're like, hey, dude, let's go to the Three Broomsticks and just have a butterbeer just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, like the way they've designed the game is very smart because you're never not having fun. Like little things like that don't necessarily add anything other than just immersion for the player. So things like that I would have enjoyed, more simulation stuff, but it's not dire. The only thing it would really add is just the immersion side for some people, and some people may not even be into that kind of thing, but I would be.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I think for now that's all we have to say. I still really would like to do a Let's Play with you, so you can see. You could even, I don't know if you'd ever want to do this, you could just lug your PS5 over here and we could show both our characters in a video and compare and contrast. Could be fun.
I don't know about that, but
but I still think it'd be fun to do if you're up for that sometime soon.
I'd be down for a Let's Play.
I haven't done that in so many years, dude.
Oh yeah.
And I got some really cool gear to use now too, so it would look really nice and sound nice.
I'd be into it.
So, but yeah, Jacob, anyone tuning in to this episode that's playing Hogwarts and have some thoughts that are either different from ours or things we miss that you'd like to talk about, hit us up and we'll definitely respond to your comments. Jacob, have you been watching The Last of Us on HBO?
I have. I'm caught
Are
up.
you completely caught up? Great. I don't want to go into it too deeply, but general thoughts so far. So, you've played the original game once, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you play it like back in the day? When did you play it last?
I played it on PS4, the remaster.
Okay,
the
so
first
that was
remaster.
That was like 2014, I think.
I don't remember.
Yeah, it was 2014. So, it's been a minute since you played the game.
Yeah.
All right, so how are you feeling about the show generally?
I think it's very good. I've enjoyed it a whole lot, more than I thought I would actually. Because I've always been like that guy that's always been like, Last of Us is good, but it's not like my thing, you know? But I think the show is, I mean, it's perfect for someone that, it's perfect for both someone that knows nothing about the games, and also it's perfect for people that love the games. Like there's things that you can sort of see in the show that are direct correlations to like a scene in the game, and like there's moments where like a big moment in the game is happening in an episode of the show, and that's really cool. And then like there's also enough things as just a TV show itself where it's intriguing enough to keep your attention. It works in both mediums very well, and there hasn't been a single episode where I haven't been at the edge of my seat, like, you know, and because like it's been so long since I've played the game that I even like forgot some moments. Like I completely forgot about the Kansas City stuff. Like I completely forgot about that, and like I forgot what the guy and his son's name was, but I forgot about that whole interaction and what happens at the end of it. That was insane. It was so sad. But yeah, I've been enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. What about you, man?
I've also really enjoyed it. I think the decisions they've made narratively, I'd say like 99.9% of the decisions they've made to adapt the game into a show have worked very well. They've really taken advantage of the medium. Mm-hmm. I like the shift they made in some, I don't want to spoil anything, I'll just be very general, but I think some of the decisions they made for really famous characters from the game have been really smart and interesting. And that's what I've loved about it, is that there are very clear callbacks and references and even direct lines lifted from the game, which as a fan of the game is awesome to see. But I also like that they've taken characters and story beats and reimagined them in ways that make more sense for a TV show. Mm-hmm. And I've enjoyed every episode in its own right. And I think what's great is that going back to watch this later as a completed first season will be even more enjoyable, because it really does feel like just a long movie broken up into pieces, which is very much what the game feels like. And I think my favorite episode so far has been the most recent episode with Henry and Sam, because I didn't feel this way up until this point, but I think what they did with those characters that was different from the game. It wasn't drastic, but it was just different enough to where I think it made it even better than the game, which everything that's come before I think has only complemented the game. But this is the first part of the story in the show that I think is even better than the game was. So loved the most recent episode. I thought was outstanding in every way, and especially the conclusion. And I think, and I won't say I was like lukewarm on Bella Ramsey as Ellie, but I wasn't totally locked into her as Ellie.
Yeah,
until the conclusion of this last episode. I was like, yep, that's Ellie. That is 100% Ellie. Yeah. And that's why going forward, dude, I'm even more stoked to see it conclude, because I've really, really enjoyed it. So everyone involved, from the obviously the cast, the writing, the crew, the direction has been really outstanding. And I've also really liked the podcast with Troy Baker, Neil Druckmann, and Craig Mazin, who kind of break down each episode after it airs. Really cool insight into the production side and the thought process behind why they made the decisions they made. Just really gives a lot of extra context to what they were thinking. So it'd be one thing if you see like the changes they made and you kind of like left out to like think on your own of like, why did they do this that way? It's cool to hear why they've made certain decisions, and really adds the impact of the story unfolding the way they're doing it. So
Yeah.
it's in great hands. And all that said, it's just further, a lot of people have commented on this, is that it's just further impacted the negativity of how bad the Halo TV show was in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I forget the Halo show even exists, which is really sad.
Is there going to be a second season?
They're currently filming the second season.
Okay.
We can only hope that they heard the feedback and make different decisions from a story and production standpoint, but we'll see.
I never watched a single episode. I don't know if I need to.
Yeah, it's very bad. There's maybe one or two decent fight scenes, and the rest is just so terrible.
Yeah.
So I would just avoid it if I were you.
Did Master Chief take his helmet off?
Oh yeah, dude. You see him butt ass naked multiple times.
Oh.
He talks too much too. So he is not even a fragment of who Master Chief is in the games, unfortunately.
Wonder why they decided to do that.
Because they're just fools. They're actually fools.
They're
like the
fools.
people writing that show are foolish. So there's no other way to put it.
Who's
Absolute buffoonery.
who's making the show?
It's sci-fi.
Sci-fi.
I think it's sci-fi. Yeah.
Well, that's why.
Yeah. It's just like classic, like generic, stupid sci-fi TV shows. What it feels like. Like all the other garbage sci-fi's put out over the years. Not to say everything's bad, but this is bad. Anyway, I think, like I said, I don't want to spoil Last of Us, but really digging it and can't wait to watch more. So I think that brings us to AskIOG.
Oh, man.
AskIOG is the part of the show where we answer your questions submitted through any of our social media at ItsObviousGaming, the AskIOG section of our Discord channel, or emailed to us at ItsObviousGaming@gmail.com. And if you want your question read live on the show, always include the hashtag AskIOG. Coffee is Life writes in, and Coffee, I want to say, I want to apologize publicly, depending on when this episode actually airs. You messaged us on Discord. It was Friday night, the 17th of February, asking if we were either in the city or at the August Burns Red show. I was at that show, but I didn't see your message until like 3 hours later, and I'm so sorry. If you were at that show, I would have totally said hey, but I was there briefly with a friend. We didn't even stay for August Burns Red. We went there for Bleed From Within and Devil Wears Prada, but I like August Burns Red, but I just saw them recently at the Tabernacle, so we bailed, but would have totally said what's up. I'm so sorry about that. But if you're ever in the city again or near the city, just hit Jacob and I up, because we're around.
Yeah,
But it says, hey there.
like 10:30. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
It says, hey there, Yogs. Been listening to you guys for many years. I love and appreciate the content you guys have continued to put out over the years. I'm not sure if this question has been answered before, but if you guys can make your dream game with unlimited assets, what setting would it take place in? What specific gameplay loops, mechanics, aesthetics would you go for? By the way, you guys have helped inspire me to begin working out. I've been consistent for 2 months now and don't plan on stopping. Loving the sense of progression there is to this. Love you guys. Coffee, we love you too, man. I'm sad we couldn't meet last night, but in due time, my friend. And thanks for writing in and tuning in all these years. Dream game. We've definitely done this before. I think probably a few times over the last nearly 8 years. Dude, Jacob, we'll be 8 years old in like 5 days.
Are you kidding me?
That's February 23rd.
Oh my gosh.
So wild, dude. Coming up on a decade. Anyway. Dream game. What? How about today? What dream game I would have said was Hogwarts Legacy for a long time. I think at this point, a dream game for me, I'd like to see another Batman game, whether it's Rocksteady or someone else, and make it very immersive in the sense that kind of take what worked in Batman Arkham Origins, where you can go to and from the Batcave at will, and change your suits, upgrade your suits, choose to use the Batwing or the Batmobile, Batboat, choose your gadgets. Just make it similar to the Arkham games, but more simulation-like, where you're making a lot of like RPG type decisions for Batman, and I don't know. Something like that could be cool. I know I pitched if you really want a game I imagine would be sick is what Ubisoft seemingly is developing. You can go back to like episode 40 something, maybe even before that. It's only on YouTube. It's our episode called Pitch the Next Star Wars Video Game. I go really in depth on an open galaxy Star Wars bounty hunting game I'd like to see. Outside of that at the moment, I can't really think of anything too much, but I have high hopes for the Last of Us Factions multiplayer game they're developing. I think it's going to be, whatever it is, I think it's going to be phenomenal, but I'm hoping there are extraction-like battle royale elements mixed into it that could be really cool, that we've kind of talked about over the last couple of years in this podcast off and on, but high hopes for that. But what about you, Jacob? Any kind of dream game you have in the mind at the moment? Like dream mechanics and setting and everything?
So I'm hoping Diablo 4 will be in my dream game when it comes out this year. But something kind of related to that, I think. Something that's a big, expansive world. Something that has like things happening in the world, like live events, like quick time events. Like something that has a gearing system where you're constantly improving your gear by doing like more challenging content. Something that has like a mastery over like a talent tree or a skill set of abilities that you have to weave them in a certain way to where you do more damage or that you do cooler combos. Stuff like that is really important to me. And then just like, I think the most important thing for me is like a nice gearing system and also like cool things to go do in the game is, sort of like my dream game. Things that like sort of hit that box for me right now, like a Diablo game, like a WoW, any sort of MMO that has like a good in-game progression or, fun combat, stuff to keep you invested in the game, basically. And ways to look cool. You got to be looking cool in a dream game.
I couldn't agree more. I'm excited to know Life Diablo with you when it comes out, Jacob.
Dude,
I will play every night of the week if I'm in town with you if you want.
Heck yeah, dude. Let's do it.
Not exaggerating. Stoked for that, dude.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Coffee's Life, thanks again for writing in, man. I'm sorry we're not going super in depth on that, but those are a couple ideas. And the really big one for me, again, is that open galaxy Star Wars game that if you have any interest or are bored one day, I think it's still a decent episode to listen to. It's just only on YouTube, but Pitch the Next Star Wars Video Game is a really in-depth discussion on that. But I also agree coffee is definitely life. Bit of an addict myself.
I wonder how many episodes that Star Wars one you're talking about is. Like, how old is it?
It's very old. I think I looked it up recently when Ubisoft had that announcement about what they were developing. I think it's like 20-ish or 30 or something. It's really early on. Zach Bynum is on that episode as well. And I haven't scrubbed all the way through it, but that might be the same episode where we imagined Robert Pattinson could be a good Batman years before he was cast as Batman.
Yeah.
I know one episode in those early days we did talk about that long before he was Batman, because the question was, who would you cast as the next Batman? And we landed on Robert Pattinson, which is amazing.
You're secretly like giving everyone all the answers.
Right, yeah.
They just don't know it. Or they do know it. They're stealing it.
Coffee, thanks again for writing in. Reese05 writes in and says, "Hi guys, question for the crew. Is there a genre of games you don't like, but there's one game within that genre you love? For example, I don't like racing games at all, but if there's an arcade type like Forza Horizon, then I do like it." After you, Jacob.
I have to think.
I got a couple examples like that. Mario Kart, I know, is very much an arcade cartoony racer, but I adore Mario Kart, but I'm kind of like could give or take any other racing game. I think Forza Horizon's fun too, but I only enjoy it for like short bursts of time. Ironically, my favorite racing game of all time was the racing in GTA 5. That's an example of like, I mean, GTA's always had driving, but like the racing alone could have been its own game in GTA and it was outstanding. I think about the same potential for Quidditch in Hogwarts. Like it could be designed so well that people just want to go to the game to play that. So think about the people that just only want to play Quidditch, like would buy the game just to play Quidditch. That's like even more sales potential. That's just something else to think about from a business standpoint.
Yeah.
Other games I like in a genre that I don't traditionally like.
I got one. I like Resident Evil games, but I don't like scary games very much.
Interesting.
They scare me.
Yeah, I love horror games, man. I love horror movies too.
You could argue that Resident Evil, like especially the Village, it's not that scary. There's a couple spooky moments, but
I can't remember the last game I was truly scared of. I guess Outlast 1 was kind of spooky because you were kind of powerless and had to run and hide.
Yeah.
So I've always thought like the way to make any game truly scary is to have dire consequences, like very minimal save points and like minimal resources. So if you use something at the wrong time, or if you are vulnerable and you haven't been able to save in a while, that's what makes it truly scary. All the aesthetic is just what contributes to the scare in an interactive medium. So if this guy's chasing you and you can't attack him, your only choice is to run for your life. And if he kills you, it's going to set you back a long way. That's what's truly terrifying and really amps it up. So I haven't been scared from a game in a long time, unfortunately, but I always like it, at the very least, the horror aesthetic of horror games.
So are you saying the most terrifying thing in a scary game for you is if a big guy's chasing you and you like turn around, you're like, please don't reset me to the checkpoint, please.
Pretty much, because that's the thing. It's like that may not be at the front of your mind, but like that's in your mind somewhere, knowing that like you have a lot to lose if they catch you. So a big scary monster chasing you is one thing, but if you know it's going to actually cost you, is what makes it even scarier. Yeah. I think that's what's effective about hardcore modes and like Last of Us and like permadeath modes is what makes those games truly terrifying.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
it also adds a little thrill to it.
Yeah, exactly. I guess for fighting games, I've always liked to dabble in Mortal Kombat, but that's only because it's just Mortal Kombat. Like I've never been a fan of fighting games, but I'll always play around in
you have a fascination of limbs falling off and being ripped off and stuff.
I've never been into roguelikes. I've never been able to get into any of them. And even most recently, I liked a lot about Returnal, but even if they like find workarounds to like get you through the reset process, like Returnal does it well, but I still just can't do it, dude. I just don't like that kind of game design at all. Never been able to get into roguelikes. So
I mean, I want to say like your Mario Kart example works for me. Like I don't play racing games, but I love Mario Kart. Super Smash Bros. Probably my favorite fighting game, but I don't really play that game very much, and I don't play other fighting games. So I guess like that's kind of an exception. But I don't really have any great examples. I kind of like play the same games all the time. Like I'm very boring in that regard. I don't play a lot of new games.
Shooters. I'll play almost any. If any shooter is even deemed decent, I'll try it. Mega fan of shooters. I will say, I don't think it's RTS. What do you call those games that are like XCOM? I guess strategy, somewhat. Yeah. I can't remember the exact title, but
RTS is real-time strategy.
Yeah, but I think that's more like like base building and armies and stuff is what I'm thinking of. But whatever you would call a game like XCOM 2, I know what's that Marvel game that came out that commercially has failed, but it's apparently really good.
Midnight Society?
Midnight Suns.
Yeah, Midnight Suns.
I think the XCOM developer did Midnight Suns, but I played a lot of XCOM 2 because I've always liked the idea of those games. I've heard Gears Tactics is pretty solid as well. I've always liked the idea of them, and for a while I'll enjoy them, but I'll bounce off after a few hours usually. But that's a genre that's always intrigued me. I just haven't really given much time to.
So is XCOM not RTS because it's not happening like all at once? Like, is there turns?
Yeah, there's turns. Okay. Like you'll move your characters into different positions, and like that's the whole strategy is figuring out how to like flank enemies and like overcome the obstacles.
Then you end your turn, then the enemy goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's like traditional strategy, like Fire Emblem.
Nice.
I guess. I don't know if there's another name for that genre. I might be wrong. But yeah, I guess Fire Emblem would be the exception for me for that kind of game. Although I haven't played the new one yet. I've heard really good things about it though. People seem to like it.
Cool. I don't think I have anything else. One thing I want to add real quick while we're talking about older games is my Analog Pocket finally arrived. You know what that is, Jacob?
Didn't you say it was like a Game Boy thing?
Yeah, it plays like Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and SP games. You can get the actual physical cartridges, or you can just download ROMs, which I did for a lot of Super Nintendo games. And all the classics are out there, and I have a lot of classics on it right now. I haven't played it much, but they look gorgeous, and the display run perfectly.
That's awesome.
And of course, very nostalgia-inducing, so it's been cool.
You did ask me which Pokemon you thought you should play.
All of them are out there. I could play any of them.
I also have a lot of them in my closet if you wanted to borrow.
Oh, that'd be awesome, actually. I'd prefer to play like the physical cartridge, I think.
Just let me know. I'll see. I'll have to see which ones I actually have. Like, I think some of them are like up north with my parents in storage, and then some are in my closet. So
Nice.
just have to see.
It's funny. I had actually forgotten that I bought it because I bought it like a year and a half ago. And I remember when I bought it, they said like you're long down the list of when you're going to get this thing. It'd be like at least a year. I was like, all right, whatever.
Expected arrival, a year.
Yeah, it was like over a year when it was like my whatever they called it section of when I was receiving it. And I'm glad they hit me up with an email like 2 weeks before it shipped. It was like, hey, just heads up, your Analog Pocket's going to ship on this day.
That's awesome.
And it was from my old address. I was like, I'm glad I heard from you guys. I actually live somewhere else now, so I got to update it in time, and it came to the right place, which is good. So yeah, it's been sick, dude. I'm glad I got it.
Do you get Amazon packages stolen in your apartment complex?
They do get stolen a lot, but thankfully Amazon started delivering just to the mailroom exclusively because so many people were stealing Amazon packages.
Yeah, see, our mailroom sucks, and there's not like a place to pick up packages in there. So like they sometimes they drop them at doors, other times they just drop them off in one place and they don't tell anybody. Yeah. So I'm always hesitant to like use Amazon. I've never had a problem with like the post service or like UPS or something, but it's always Amazon.
Yeah. It really depends on the Amazon driver, unfortunately, because they're all technically freelancers and they all have different attitudes and decisions they make. Like
if they're like having a bad day, they just throw them off somewhere and
exactly.
Move on.
I've seen Amazon drivers straight up just dump them on the floor of the mailroom, just like a pile of them. You have to dig through them to find it.
Yeah.
Most of the good ones deliver straight to the leasing office lobby, is where they'll go into the leasing office mailroom, so they're safe in there. But I've seen them dumped on the floor. I've seen them just like thrown in on front of people's doors. This depends on the driver, unfortunately. But whenever I order something extremely important, typically something for work, I have it sent to my parents' place. I'll drive all the way to Dahlonega to get it just out of safety. So
hey, that's safer.
Yeah,
I don't blame you. It's a long drive though. It's like an hour.
If you ever, Jacob, seriously, if you ever wanted, if you had something important to order and wanted that option, just let me know and you can mail it to my parents' place if you want to be safe.
Yeah, that might actually be really helpful.
Yeah.
Although I could get it sent to my aunt and uncle's place too. They live in Cumming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have that option. I know you're limited now that your parents moved out of state.
Yeah. It's still very weird. I miss them a lot.
All on your lonesome, man. That is interesting. I mean, my parents are pretty far too. I don't see them that often, but the fact that yours are like way up the country is a big change.
A solid 7 hours away. It's not just a short little drive.
Man, yeah, that's significant for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting few months. I'll say that. Not being able to, like, you can't just like fall back on the parents like you used to, you know. It's got to be like, I guess I got to figure this out myself.
Yeah.
Which is kind of embarrassing to say when you're 30 years old, but, you know. We all have our different upcomings. Yes, we all develop in different ways. But it's been nice just being on my own. I mean, I have a roommate, but, you know, it's been fun.
I'm glad I get to see you fairly often.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not as much as I'd like to see you, but, you know,
it's up to you, Jay. You can see me anytime. I'm very easy to see. I'm home. If I'm in town, I'm home every night.
I'm just not free, like, mostly during the week. Like, weekends, like, my only time.
Okay. So I'm really hoping you're heavily considering going to lunch with me today, because I can pick you up very easily, and it's a beautiful day, and there's a lot of good options around us. Just a thought.
We'll talk about it.
We'll talk. Reese, thank you again for writing in, man. Steven writes in and says, good morning, fellas. What are your thoughts on Knock at the Cabin? It looks like the movie is swimming in 6s and 7s critically. I personally feel it's a 7 out of 10 as a fair review. Jacob, you were just talking to me about this before the episode, that you were not satisfied with it.
It's poopy. It's fine. It's like, it's not that great. I think like a 5 or a 6 is where it belongs. It's entertaining at some moments, like the beginning, it's kind of good. Then like how it kind of progresses in the middle is good. But I'm really just not happy about the end. The end is just so disappointing and just makes it not even worth watching, in my opinion. Without, you know, spoiling the whole movie, not that anyone really cares. Maybe some people care and they want to go see it, but I mean, there were definitely some cool moments in it, I guess, but I can't think of them. Maybe I'm just being overly critical for no reason. I'm just being a hater. I've seen much better movies. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, so have I also would probably give it about a 7 out of 10. I'm a big M. Night Shyamalan fan. Actually, one of my favorite movies of all time is Signs by M. Night Shyamalan. It's definitely one of his better films.
So you're biased.
And no, I'm not actually. I'm actually usually most critical of the things I love most. Like I'm a hardcore Hunt Showdown fan, and I gave it like an 85 when I reviewed it for Caught Connected. When the 1.0 version launched, I was like heavily critical of it.
Yeah.
But I also thought it was just fine. The only thing I don't like about the ending, without spoilers, is that it was just too conclusive for my taste. Because sometimes, not always, I guess all of Shyamalan's films, now that I think about it, are all pretty conclusive. But this is based on an existing novel. Mm-hmm. I wish the ending had been a little more ambiguous. Because I always appreciate endings that aren't as conclusive, because that way you can chew on it more and discuss it more and think about it more and kind of unpack it. That makes a movie going experience more interesting to me. It's like the discussion that can happen afterward. But when something's so conclusive, which isn't always a bad thing, because usually it's like the journey that gets you there is what matters most. Yeah. The journey getting to the end, I did enjoy, and it kept you guessing up until the very end. So the end gets there, and you're like, okay, like that's what it was. We can move on now. But so I didn't walk out really feeling like there was much to unpack from the movie, but I thought all the performances were strong. I thought it was written very well. I really like Dave Bautista in the movie. And I'm also a huge fan of how M. Night Shyamalan uses the camera, and his long takes and his style of filmmaking has always been very captivating to me. So all that was strong to me. I just think the script, I wouldn't even say it's a script problem. I just think the story wasn't that interesting at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But there's some cool stuff in there. I think it's definitely worth seeing. Probably not worth seeing it in the theater unless you're like a hardcore M. Night Shyamalan fan. But
yeah, I wouldn't really recommend it.
I didn't dislike it. I wasn't bored or anything. I just thought it was kind of fine. So
yeah,
kind of feel the same.
I don't know. Like, I want to like say another thing, but it also is kind of a spoiler, so I'm not going to say it. But it just wasn't like satisfying to me. Like after watching it, like it's such like a contained story. Like it happens all in one little place. Then like big things are happening outside of that little place around the world, and it just like it was hard for me to really feel the weight of the things happening. Because like you see little snippets of it, like they're like watching TV and stuff, and things are happening around the world because of decisions they're making. But I just couldn't be like, am I making sense? Like I just didn't really feel like, oh my god, like what are they doing? Like why? Like I didn't have like that emotional, like I don't even like I just didn't feel like it mattered that much. Like, and I don't know how they would really solve what I'm trying to explain. Like I just didn't feel like invested that much, for lack of a better way of explaining myself. I'd have to think about it more, honestly. It's not really a movie that I'm thinking too much about. It's just not something that I really, entertain me very much.
Yeah, I haven't really given any thought to it either since we saw it, because I have also seen phenomenal movies around the same time before and after that I've thought a lot more about. So not a bad movie, just a fine film for me at least.
Yeah.
Steven, thanks for writing in, man. Last one's from 32 Speedster Sam Harris. He says, boys, what's up? It's been a while. Hope y'all are doing well. Video games, huh? They're pretty cool. Pretty cool. Anyway, this year seems to be filled with bangers all around and maybe more. I'm thrilled that Nintendo finally decided to use some brain cells and give us a Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games. Speaking of Game Boy, have y'all heard of the story about the creation of Tetris? It's pretty cool, and an upcoming movie starring Taron Egerton is going to dramatize how it happened. What's your favorite anecdote about gaming history? It's crazy how some games came to be and unbelievable true stories behind them. Check out Gaming Historian on YouTube if you want to delve into some cool gaming history. I had no idea that's a channel. I'll have to check that out.
I've heard of them.
I've kind of like most trailers I've stopped watching these days for almost every movie. But I have seen stills of Taron Egerton from the Tetris movie, and that's a story that definitely interests me because that's kind of like a timeless game that will never not be interesting to some degree. So that's kind of amazing. But I would definitely like to see that story. So
I did watch the preview for that one. I didn't know the maker of Tetris was from like Moscow or something. Like,
I didn't know that either.
Like the guy who like made it blow up in the US like had to travel to Russia to convince the guy to let him, make his game.
Interesting. It's kind of
like video games. And
if
video
I'm
game
understanding
version.
understanding that correctly, it sounds kind of like what the founder story with what's his name did with the McDonald's brothers and made it huge because they just didn't have the ambition to make it huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is cool that they're doing that with the Game Boy stuff. And I just mentioned the Analog Pocket, which is nice as well. It's cool that they shadow drop Metroid Prime. Stoked to get into that. Yeah, video games are cool. A lot of bangers this year. Many more on the way very soon. But I'll definitely have to check out that Gaming Historian. I'm going to add it right now before I forget. Sounds pretty cool.
I don't know if I have any favorite anecdotes. Yeah.
I don't really have any of my own, but one of my favorite gaming books I've read is Blood, Sweat, and Pixels from Jason Schreier. A lot of cool stories in that book about development processes, notably Destiny, I remember, is in there. Shovel Knight's in there. I think Dragon Age Inquisition is in there as well, if I'm remembering correctly. A lot of cool chapters dedicated to the development of some big, famous games. So I love hearing stuff like that, especially after the fact. I mean, you kind of almost see like the writing on the walls for a lot of these games these days when like marketing's been strange and like delays and like think of Skull and Bones as one example. That's clearly been absolute hell for that team for so long. I hope when we've kind of like a lot of transparency has come out about 343 over the last several months with what's been going on there for a long time. The restructuring and all the people that were fired recently and the development hell that Infinite was. It's mostly been painted clearly at this point, but I've long hoped for some form of a documentary where they're just completely open and transparent about what happened with like even starting with like Halo 4 all the way up until now, like what led them to today, because it's not completely disastrous, but it's mostly a catastrophe what's happened with Halo as an IP. So there's still some redeeming qualities, but it's mostly bad. So I'd love to hear that story one day in depth, whether in written form or video.
Yeah. I would expect something like that for a long time, honestly.
Yeah. It would have to be a collection of people that have either been fired or willingly left the studio that all come together to create something like that.
Yeah. And they probably signed something too.
Yeah, because I don't think Microsoft would ever actually let that happen. It just wouldn't be worth it to them. I've always thought that I think transparency, whether negative or positive, is mostly a healthy thing. Because whether it's bad news or good news, it's always good, I feel like, to be transparent, especially when you're talking to consumers and fans of a product. So even if 343 came out and like explained everything and it was completely dire, at least then people would have some empathy for them as human beings. Not that, I mean, I generally do even without knowing the full picture of what's happening there. But I always think transparency contributes to having a little more empathy and sympathy for people and what they're going through.
Yeah. So Blizzard kind of did something like that recently with the WoW team. So I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's a YouTuber. His name's Preach Gaming. And he was a big WoW player for many, many years. And then I think it was 2 years ago or maybe 1 year ago, he quit the game because he was not happy with the state of the game and the decisions that the developer was making around the game. So, and then he jumped to Final Fantasy 14 and he was like one of the big, YouTubers that covered the game for many years. And obviously not just he quit, like a lot of people quit the game back in Shadowlands. And basically he came back for Dragonflight. He said he wanted to try the game and stuff. And he asked Blizzard like if he could come out and do like a documentary style, basically like interview, sort of kind of like a No Pixel, like just one of those documentary style, just talking to developers and like the history of the game and stuff like that. So they said he could come out and do that, and it's like a 2-part YouTube video series, and it shows like a complete shift in like the new WoW team and like how they're developing the game and like the things they think about now as opposed to like how they used to make decisions around like how things have always been. So they just kept doing the same thing over and over again because that was like the blueprint of what made WoW successful. So like this is like the first expansion where they're like really listening to player feedback and like pretty much doing almost everything that the community wants, because basically they're in panic mode right now. They're trying to keep as many people happy as possible so the game can grow to the success that it used to be, basically. But it's been working so far. A lot of people are happy about the state of the game right now. They put out roadmaps, like we have things to look forward to. So it's been a nice change of pace over the last, it's been about a year or so since they've kind of had this shift in philosophy. So it's been very refreshing, I'll say, as a fan.
Yeah, that's great. That is good news.
Oh, and another thing, I forgot what the show was on Netflix. It was like about Nintendo and like how they sort of like started and how they became to be Nintendo. And it was like a show about tech, I think, but it was a bunch of different like subjects. Nintendo was one of them. It was like the history of Mario and Donkey Kong and stuff, and like how it started out and what, like how it came to be Nintendo. I forgot what that show was called. Forgive me, but it's on Netflix. It's an episode of a show.
Nice. That sounds cool.
Yeah. That's all I got.
Nice. Well, before we close out, I wanted to ask, do you have any interest in Wild Hearts?
I don't know anything about it.
Oh, yeah. It's basically like an evolution of Monster Hunter.
Hmm.
There's like a lot of familiarity with Monster Hunter, but apparently improves on some things and adds some new ideas. But I've heard mostly positive reception. I've heard some mixed thoughts. I've heard PC, it's kind of a bummer with performance and everything, but apparently on console, it's pretty solid. But I've never really been into those games, but it looks kind of cool, and I've heard good things about it. So I was wondering if you'd looked into it at all.
I will now. I'll watch some stuff about it.
Nice.
See if it looks good.
Well, Jacob, that concludes episode 279 of the It's Obvious podcast. An honor as always, and thank you to everyone tuning in and everyone who wrote in for this episode after all this time. I know we take long breaks these days, but it's always a pleasure to do this, and we're thankful for your support after all these years. Coming up on 8 years as an existing podcast, and content in addition to that. And Jacob and I are hoping to do a Hogwarts Let's Play for fun here in the near future. It'd be cool to get a video of the two of us on the channel again, because it's been a very long time. So that's it for me, Jacob. Any closing thoughts?
No, man. Thanks for having me. Excited to go play some more Legacy, and hopefully we get that Let's Play going soon. I'd like to do that.
Anytime, baby. Anytime.
Anytime.
Well, ladies and gents, once again, thanks for tuning in. We love you to bits, and we will catch you on the next one.
Peace.
Peace.